It's gone! And Giroux's got it!
And the Sixers have scored 9 in a row. Are you kidding me?
And a good Wednesday late morning right here on Kutztown Radio on the Tyler Werner Show. Joining you as always during the 2015 spring semester to talk Philadelphia sports. We got a loaded show to, a lot of topics to get today. Well, I guess, I'd say unfortunately this morning Mitch Lambert will not be joining us. He's got a lot going on, I guess. No! But and it's a shame too. I was actually gonna bring something up about last week in the show, and I guess it'll be the starting point because it was a conversation that I was hoping to get back to and revisit a little bit because obviously one of my longtime friends who listens to the show every week, I believe, aka Batman Wayne. Last week, him and I we talked about we did like this little this podcast that we do oftentimes, and we were talking Eagles, and he said he basically kind of called out Mitch Lambert. He said I forget how he worded it, but he said some guy named Mitch Lambert praised Darren Sproles, and it was not very sad, I guess, after all, to see LaShawn McCoy go. I guess, Wayne felt that Mitch was too, I guess, he poo-pooed LaShawn McCoy and the past season and everything, and praised Darren Sproles too much. And Wayne, kind of criticized me for not being too hard, not being hard at all on Mitch Lambert about it. And I think the reason... I guess I wasn't too hard on him. I think I don't know. And again, this is why I wish Mitch. Mitch has to do what he has to do today, but with school and everything. But it would have been nice to dive into this conversation today, kind of, maybe get a reinterpretation out of Mitch, because I think I know what he meant when he's talking Darren Sproles and the direction of this running game, the new direction of this running game, getting DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews, what they're doing with that, LaShawn McCoy, and the somewhat disappointing season, I guess you could say, he had in 2013. Still, I guess to some extent productive, but I guess I'll try to clarify my end. I guess it's, Mitch Lambert isn't here. At least because obviously Darren Sproles, He's not the, I guess, the bread and butter running back is some NFL analysts, I guess, with the cliche that they would throw out there, I guess you could say. He's not your bread and butter running back, however you want to word it. Not the guy like LaShawn McCoy who's going to get 20-plus carries a game, not like DeMarco Murray, not like Marshawn Lynch oftentimes, and, some of the premier backs in the NFL, the kind of carries that they will get. Darren Sproles, he's a small guy. He's getting in his, he's 30. Well, he'll be 32 in just a couple of months on June 20th. So he's and certainly like towards the latter part of this past season, Darren Sproles, was kind of more of a part-time back. I guess he was throughout the entire season, but he was even more sparsely used in the offense, I think, later on in the season, even including the passing game. And he kind of was more of a, throughout the season, a special teams punt returner specialist, I guess you could say. And obviously a good one at that. Now that the Eagles have DeMarco Murray, obviously, who's probably going to get, he's going to be your primary back, although he's probably going to mix in the rushing duties along with Ryan Matthews. Again, Ryan Matthews, if he stays healthy, obviously it's one of the main factors in that. Again, you still got Darren Sproles in there. Who's I guess going to get a couple carries maybe here and there at most. He's not going to be getting too many carries. I have Darren Sproles' stats here up, which I'll go through, and I'll continue this conversation, I guess, to open the show, since That's what I was planning on doing with Mitch Lambert, kind of giving him a chance to reiterate himself. But I think I know what he was getting at last week. But I look at these stats here, and the most carries that Darren Sproles ever had in a single game this season was 7. So I mean, obviously Darren Sproles is only getting older, so he's not getting any younger. He's a small back, so he's never going to be getting that many carries to begin with. So you got DeMarco Murray, Ryan Matthews sharing the load, and then again that begs the question: where does Chris Polk fit in on this team? And Mitch said Polk might be the odd man out here. I think that's a little bit unfortunate to some extent, because I think at least Polk, I mean, he's not a guy that's going to get 20 plus carries or whatever. He can't fill anybody's shoes, but I would think that he'd be a guy, short yardage situation that you could have in there. You could have him run the ball, maybe a couple carries below 10 a game, something like that. I don't know. It depends on how you're game planning for the week. But I thought, Polk, when he was healthy, of course, as well. He could be effective in short yardage situations where, say, like LaShawn McCoy wasn't, or whatever, and maybe a situation where, say, even Darren Sproles might not be ideal for running the ball and everything. Because Sproles, he's a small guy. You get him in open space. His acceleration is like second to none. Good straight line back, I guess you could say, when you can use him. And I think that's I think Mitch knew that last week when I was talking about, when he was talking about Darren Sproles and how effective he was. When in the sparse usage that you can get out of him. That kind of brings me to, I guess, what I was going to address here with Mitch Lambert, kind of go through. Because, again, I think I know what Mitch meant last week when he was kind of praising Darren Sproles and, LaShawn McCoy. So my take on it, and again, I got stats up here so I can kind of, I guess, put things into perspective. And just even without talking about stats, just like take a look back this past season with the running game and everything, and just general impressions, not even stats, because you can look at stats and sometimes, like, LaShawn McCoy this past season, he had 1,319 yards on 312 carries, a 4.2 yards average. Now, there were games like, for instance, the Giants and the Dallas Cowboys, where they blew, the first one against the Cowboys, of course, where they blew those teams out of the water. And, quite frankly, LaShawn McCoy had great games those days, but quite frankly, he didn't even need to be on the field, it would so appear, for the Eagles to even win those games. But nevertheless, LaShawn McCoy, he had field days those games. And it's, so that there's a couple games like that where numbers were inflated. But there were other games, early on in the season. Just look back on this past season. There was a different feeling, numbers aside. It felt more often than not. I know the Eagles' offensive line was, shifting players in and out. You'd see in the various games how the production team, whoever was covering the game, would point that out, and how they, this and that with the offensive line. Obviously, that was one thing, but just watching games throughout this past season, and in particular LaShawn McCoy, there were so many instances, at least where I'm sitting there, where I'm watching him and I'm thinking, I'm waiting for him to break out, bust out a big run, and I don't know. It's like too much of the dancing around that he can't really get away with the state of the offensive line. There's times, I guess, other running backs, I guess, think this, where you got to, and again, this is what Chip Kelly, has been kind of talking about. This is what other people have been talking. Just fans in general have been talking about. I've talked about it at times too, where the dancing around or whatever you want to call it, trying to make these big highlight reel plays or whatever, trying to get that 2,000-yard accomplishment that you said in training camp or whatever you said you were going to get in the season, and obviously that did not come close to happening. But you look at things like that, and my lasting impression of LeSean McCoy in the past season was, there were just so many runs where I'm thinking, go forward. So many, I guess, negative runs, I guess. And that, I get, the offensive line being an issue, that's one thing, but sometimes you got to just go straight forward, get, a couple yards here and there, and then eventually maybe things open up more in the running game. Again, there's so many games this past season, and especially games against more elite teams in the NFL. Seattle, they'd have none of that with LeSean McCoy, and LeSean McCoy would not be very productive. Even the first Washington game where LeSean McCoy had, he was just, early on in the season, he was snuffed like a torch on, Survivor with Jeff Probst and whatever. It was like he'd have 20 carries or however many he had, and he'd get 1 yard per carry. And I know that game it seemed like he was a bit concussed or whatever. But 2013, obviously, he had a very steady and solid offensive line, maybe the best offensive line. Many would argue 2013 they had the best offensive line in the NFL, and that got him. He got more than 1,600 yards. His yards per carry average were obviously up that season. Second to none, I would assume, and very productive season, obviously, with Sean McCoy there. This season, you could say what you want about the offensive line. It wasn't all there, but that's the NFL sometimes. And it's same thing applies when we had Nick Foles here. Like, if only Nick Foles had the healthy offensive line. Well, you're not always going to have that. It's the NFL. The New England Patriots, they haven't always had the luxury of a great offensive line. Look at Seattle. I think Seattle's a great example. They don't have a great offensive line by any means. At best, they probably have a mediocre offensive line. I think Richard Sherman would agree with that.
Mediocre.
Yeah. But that is offset to some extent, to a good extent, I guess you could say, for Russell Wilson. And, Russell Wilson, occasionally he gets sacked and this and that. It's going to happen, but his, again, his mobility, his ability to, kind of roll out and, run around like a like a Tom and Jerry episode or something, some kind of silly reference like that. His ability to get out of the pocket, make guys miss, make plays with his leg. And you don't even need to be a 4.5, 40-yard dash speed runner. You have to be at least mobile in the pocket. Tom Brady, he's a slow runner, but his ability to move in the pocket, slide in the pocket, make guys miss, step up, things that Nick Foles could not successfully do. If you can do those things, obviously it helps. It cannot help offset a mediocre offensive line. So that's at least from a quarterback standpoint, that's part of it there. And then with the running game, again, mediocre offensive line, but you got Marshawn Lynch, who's going to run through guys.
We're just about that action, boss.
He gets the ball and he goes straight forward. Now, obviously, Lynch's power is a key factor in that. LeSean McCoy, he doesn't possess that kind of power. Not every running back does. And straight line speed, again, LaShawn McCoy, he likes running it to the outside, getting an open space, quote unquote, or whatever. And Marshawn Lynch, mediocre offensive line in Seattle. And, the past couple of years, past several years in Seattle, I guess you could say, but past couple of years with a mediocre offensive line or whatever. Again, Marshawn Lynch, he gets the ball, he's going straight through guys, and he's a tough guy to bring down. And this past season, before the season, he was contemplating retirement because of his all season long, basically, he's been running on a bad lower back or, whatever. And, surely enough, he's coming back for another season, for another big payday, of course, certainly. But
He wants your money!
Another shot maybe at winning another Super Bowl. So again, he's the guy that's going to, north-south. And surely enough, going to the stats here, Lynch, he had 280 carries and going straight forward, whatever, dragging guys along the way, trying to get those yards. He had 1,306 yards in the season on 280 carries. That's 4.7 yards per average. Pretty darn good. And again, this is with an offensive line that is not great. LaShawn McCoy, same deal. Second most carries in the league, 312, 4.2 yards per carry. Now, amongst the top 10 rushing attempts and yardage guys throughout the season, running backs. Let me just put in perspective here. DeMarco Murray threw to 92 attempts, 18.45 in yards, 4.7 yards per carry. Le'Veon Bell, 290, 13.61. That's more yardage than LaShawn McCoy, less carries, 4.7 yards average. Lynch, again, 4.7 yards, less carries than LaShawn McCoy. Forte, he had a down season. He was 3.9. So, I guess throw him out there. Arian Foster, Houston, 260 carries in the season, 12.46 in yardage, 4.8 yards a carry. Justin Forsett, running back out of Baltimore. Less carries, 235 on the season, but he had a great season on those carries. He had a 5.4 yards per game. You go down the list more. There's guys that had less carries. Jeremy Hill out of Cincinnati, 5.1. Lamar Miller, Jamal Charles, those guys were in the low 200s for carries. They had 5.1 and 5 yards per carry, respectively, there. So, you look at so many guys towards the top of the rushing attempts list for the season, and, LaShawn McCoy's yards per average is pedestrian. And if it's, it's the NFL. If it's behind a mediocre offensive line and he's not as productive or whatever, even though he's getting, he's seeing the ball a lot, that's, I guess that's a big thing, especially when, you're due to get $11 million or whatever. So, that's kind of what I look at it there. 4.2 yards per game or whatever, per carry. And there were a couple games where those numbers were inflated, obviously, because they were playing a crap Giants defense or whatever and blew them out. Or they're an unprepared Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving, and where, for whatever reason, the Cowboys struggled at home anyways. So, I don't know. That's, again, LaShawn McCoy, 2013, he worked great behind the offensive line. But going forward, I kind of see what Mitch was saying. I kind of agreed with, I get subconsciously before he said anything, as far as LaShawn McCoy is concerned and Darren Sproles, the comparisons there. But the thing is, again, I looked at Darren Sproles' stats. Again, he's not a guy that's going to get a lot of carries every now and he's. I go through the list here. He had. No, I guess I mistakenly forgot about the Jaguars game when I mentioned earlier. when he had 11 carries. That would be the most he would have all season, surely enough, in the first game. I look at Darren Sproles and, LaShawn McCoy, he had, 2 touchdowns all season, had trouble in the red zone or whatever. I look at, I go through Darren Sproles here, and Sproles had, he would occasionally have, get some carries. He was used in the passing game. He was used on special teams. But it's just one of those things where, and throughout the season, the feeling was, LaShawn McCoy, he's got to get 2,000 yards. And he's trying to do too much or whatever people were saying. And then, there were times where Darren Sproles would get thrown in there for a couple carries, and Darren Sproles would, suddenly, it's like steal the spotlight in a sense. And I guess do what Chip Kelly wanted him to do more often, go straight ahead. And this is, again, this is behind the same offensive line LaShawn McCoy was running behind. So, Darren Sproles, he'd get thrown in there for a few carries and, a couple a game. Against the Jaguars, he had 6.5 yards per carry. The Colts, 6.5 on 4 rushes. He had a touchdown in both of those games. You go to, there's other games. He had 2 carries against the Packers. A whopping 2, which the Eagles were never in that game in the first place, and he had 21 yards on those 2 carries. It's just, these weird things where Sproles, he sees a few carries, but oftentimes it felt like he, LaShawn McCoy would be in there for a few series, and LaShawn McCoy, he couldn't, quote unquote, get it going or whatever, however you want to word it. And, okay, next series or in the middle of the series, they throw Darren Sproles out there. Suddenly, they're getting the ball down the field. So that's all the point. I think that's what Mitch Lambert was getting at, and that's kind of what I saw. And I guess the moral of this story here for the opening 20 minutes or whatever the show, I think, is that Chip, again, it goes back to the whole north-south running backs that we want. And I would assume that, well, I'll bring it up on the other side. I guess a story that came out this past week, but I would assume that Chip Kelly, for what they were paying LaShawn McCoy, I guess to kind of put that to rest a little bit, and I guess to, for the, for instance, the yardage average, rushing yards per run or whatever, that being down this season, I think that was I think that had a lot to do with it. Because if you're going to give the ball to a guy more than 300 times in the season like they did for LaShawn McCoy, second most carries in the NFL, hopefully he'll be getting more than 4.2 yards per carry. And again, that 4.2 is probably, is inflated by a couple of games where they played an unprepared New York Giants defense and Dallas Cowboys who weren't ready. A few games like that where LaShawn McCoy had a field day, where quite frankly it wasn't really even necessary for him to even have the ball for the Eagles to even win, because the Eagles would, easily win those games. But anyways, we got to get to the first break. 610-683-4058. We got a lot to get to on today's show, but I just, I wanted to open the show. I had planned to, address that with Mitch Lambert, but Mitch is busy today, so that's fine. I think I know what he was getting at last week, and I figured, my buddy Wayne brought it up, so I figured I'd try to, readdress that, reinterpret things, I guess, if that makes any sense. So without further ado, we'll hit the first break right here in the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio.
Email any suggestions to kur@kutztown.edu. Complaints, concerns, questions, whatever you may be thinking at the time, it's kur@kutztown.edu.
I'm in almost every school bus and classroom. I go to school with your children. We say the Pledge of Allegiance together. You've seen me around the neighborhood, and you've told me I'm a pretty good kid. Well, I'm one out of every 4 children in America, and I'm struggling with hunger. This problem is closer than you think. My teacher tells me we could grow up and be whatever we want. I want to grow up and be someone who doesn't go to bed hungry. There's enough food in this country to feed everyone. Please visit feedingamerica.org today and find your local food bank for ways to help. Every dollar you donate helps provide 7 meals for kids like me, quietly struggling with hunger. Together, we're Feeding America. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
$11:28 right here on the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio. 610-683-4058 is the number to get in. Or you can always go to facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show to post thoughts there for discussion today. I just got done addressing a lot of LaShawn McCoy talk and Darren Sproles talk, and inspired by, I guess some of the things Mitch Lambert had to say last week, and I guess maybe to clear some things up. And I'll read an article in a second, or get into a little story that popped up last week with LaShawn McCoy, a new Buffalo Bill and everything. But before that, we have an announcement from the KUR Notebook. Attention, KU community. Journalist and media critic Jennifer Posner will speak at Kutztown University at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, April 1st in Schaefer Auditorium. In her presentation, Posner will strive to give students the literacy tools they need to unpack representations of violence in news, pop culture, and advertising. This event is sponsored by the Association of Campus Events, the Feminist Majority Leadership Alliance, and the Women's Center at KU. For more information, please visit www.kutztown.edu. This message of community interest brought to you by the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. So, I just mentioned about last week some things LaShawn McCoy had to say from ESPN.com. LaShawn McCoy, Eagles panicked. So he was traded to the Buffalo Bills, obviously, and said that the Eagles overreacted by signing free agents DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews. Quote, I saw that they originally were trying to get Frank Gore and he backed out. So then they got DeMarco and they got Ryan Matthews. I thought it was like a panic move. Now and I've discussed this before. I wouldn't call it a panic move, as LaShawn McCoy felt it was. I know one of the critics, and I think he says, LaShawn McCoy, he says it a little later down here, that he basically, McCoy said they took 2 backs to replace 1. I think DeMarco's quite a back, and I think he'll do a good job there. I'm not sure how that went. The thing, obviously it feels like Chip Kelly is kind of doing things unplanned. I've heard the term frequently thrown out by like Mike Missinelli, for example, flying by the seat of his pants, and this is what Chip Kelly's doing.
Brindy, how you doing, man?
Kind of like he did in the college days of coaching. It's stuff like that. And I don't know, and we'll get into some interesting discussion today, and of more on that. Chip Kelly being put into the position, the king of Philadelphia Eagles football here, as some would say, and stuff like that. We got that to get into shortly, and more on that there. But as far as like Chip Kelly, with this whole thing with the running back signings, people can, I guess, criticize it and everything, whatever they did. They can call it a panic move. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I think, the idea here, at least from maybe me trying to get inside the head of a head coach, I don't think it's that Chip Kelly panicked. I think it was more that DeMarco Murray, he had, he wasn't signed yet by anybody. he kind of fell into the lap of Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly must be thinking, well, I like DeMarco. He's a straight ahead back or whatever, and everything, this and that. He was by far the league leading rusher, and everything else you want to, twist into that narrative there. And I guess him and Ryan Matthews, he feels, are more straight ahead backs that are ideal for him. He thinks maybe the combination of those two, that's why you would sign both of them, I guess, so that maybe you can take a little more pressure off of both backs, for instance, mix it up a little bit. Kind of like I think that was maybe kind of the point of having Darren Sproles in there, at least, or the reason of bringing him in and having Chris Polk run the ball a little bit more often, maybe to give LaShawn McCoy, put less on LaShawn McCoy's shoulders. Now, certainly LaShawn McCoy would still get a lot of carries throughout the season, obviously, but I think, maybe, and I mean, we've seen this with other teams. I mean, the Patriots, the way they've rotated running backs in and out. But the difference here is obviously you got DeMarco Murray, who's coming off of, a season of leading the NFL by several hundred yards in rushing. So I think that's part of it. It's not. I don't think it's that. They're using two backs to replace one, because again, LaShawn McCoy, he got a lot of carries, the second most of the NFL. But when you're getting 4.2 yards per carry, with that many carries, as opposed to, 4.7, or guys like Justin Forsett, who's getting 5.4 yards per carry, on less carry. If you have a 4.2 yards per average rusher on your team throughout the season, getting that many carries, and getting paid, $11 million or whatever. Is that worth it? I mean, you got to take everything into perspective there. And I know the whole culture thing is brought up into things in the perspective as well. I can see how that could also be wrapped into it. I mean, you think back to when LaShawn McCoy in the offseason said he was going to rush for 2,000 yards. I remember hearing from Chip Kelly in a press conference, shortly after that, well, we're not about individual stats and everything, and he kind of wanted to calm down, LaShawn, that kind of thing. And so I mean, I'm not surprised, and it comes down to a multitude of factors, I think. But if you want to go the X's and O's route, I guess, with replacing production and maybe thinking, for the same price, I guess overall, for what you would have had to pay LaShawn McCoy, they'll pay DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews. And Chip, I would think, believes that he's going to get more production out of the combination of those two guys. And maybe they'll be able to run the ball more. Maybe they'll, because there were games throughout this season where the Eagles threw 50-some times with Mark Sanchez and Nick Foles, who, I mean, and it's one of those things. I mean, you typically don't want any quarterback, even Tom Brady, throwing that many times in a game.
To me, those balls are perfect.
Although against the Baltimore Ravens in the playoffs, I mean, you got to hand it to Tom Brady and the Patriots. They threw the ball more than 50 times, certainly, and they still won the game. That was in a playoff game. But then again, that's superhuman Tom Brady quarterback and Bill Belichick at their best there, I guess you could say. But again, typically, that throwing more than 50 times in a game is not a formula for winning in the NFL. And there were a lot of times where, unfortunately, this season they had the running game was just not working or whatever. They couldn't establish it. LaShawn McCoy was getting stopped for too many negative runs and whatever. And again, Darren Sproles, yeah, he can get good run. He can have some good carries in there. But again, he's a guy that he can't be out there getting a high workload. He can't be getting the same workload as LaShawn McCoy, let alone even sometimes more than 5 carries per game, as you could easily see going down the stats for the season. So, especially now in his 30s. So, you can use Sproles in little spurts, I guess, but you can't rely on him, and that was kind of the point I was making earlier. But I'm thinking, you would think, I mean, if Chip Kelly likes Darren Sproles-like guys, but, maybe Darren Sproles-like guys that you can actually hand the ball off to more times than 3 or 4 carries a game, since that was like the average, I guess, for Darren Sproles throughout the season. I think that's what Chip Kelly's thinking there. I guess he knows that, well, I can't hand the ball off 10 plus times or whatever to Darren Sproles in a game, but I want guys like him that are going to run straight forward, whether they're powerful or whether it's by, quick acceleration like Darren Sproles has, and, straight line speed. That's I think that's, in a nutshell, really kind of the motives behind that. So, I mean, I don't know, you could call it a desperation move or a panic move. I don't really think I think it's just Chip Kelly just kind of, quote unquote, flying by the seat of his pants and not having a grand plan. And, guy falls in your lap, you sign him. That's that. I mean, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, if things don't, if DeMarco Murray doesn't pan, Ryan Matthews, they don't pan out or whatever, which, I mean, I think it has potential to be, productive, maybe, an improvement over what they had. I think that's the motives behind this, and, rotating backs in so that, maybe DeMarco Murray's not getting nearly 400 carries this season like he did at Dallas. Yeah, I think that's got to be part of it. Maybe they can use more, multi-back sets here. Maybe they won't have to do as much out of shotgun like when they had to do with Nick Foles and I mean that was part of it too. I mean, LeSean McCoy, they had to run out of shotguns so often because you had to compensate for Nick Foles and Mark Sanchez and them kind of lacking some mobility. And Bradford, I mean, I don't know, again, I mean, the ACL and his mobility, it goes back to the whole, ideal franchise quarterback thing with mobility and everything. And so that you don't have to be running out of shotgun all the time. And I don't know. I mean, they say LeSean McCoy, he didn't like running out of shotgun as much, and he wasn't as effective. And I don't know. I mean, but these other guys that they brought in, again, I think it's a multitude of things, but I wouldn't call it a panic move. I would just kind of call it so what? We didn't, Frank Gore changed his mind on us. Well, DeMarco Murray's available. What, yeah, I might pay him a lot, but I believe with him and Ryan Matthews and I guess whoever the third string back would be, can get more production out of them than what we would have with LeSean McCoy. Maybe I can do more here. Maybe I can rotate these guys in and out. I don't know. I'm just, proposing some theories on that as well. But I wish the best of luck to LeSean McCoy in Buffalo, certainly. Buffalo, I mean, they could use a quarterback, I guess, and maybe more of an offensive line themselves. But, LeSean McCoy, league-leading rusher in franchise history. I mean, he had we had memories here, but, it's I guess the reality of the NFL, the business of the NFL, and, of course, the old Chip Kelly factor when it comes to him and as the coach, and essentially now being the GM and having more of, more power than almost any other head coach in the league now, essentially, because he's more than a head coach now. He's essentially like the GM and to me, the personnel guy. We'll get into more of that on the other side because we got to hit another break. But there's a lot to get to on today's edition of the Tyler Werner Show. So, just got to stay tuned right now and share your thoughts if you'd like it. 610-683-4058 or on the Facebook page at facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. And that, on the other side, we'll be back shortly with the Tyler Werner Show Caller of the Week. Stay tuned right here on KUR.
Kutztown University's Department of Information Technology recently launched MyKU Mobile, which can be accessed at mykumobile.kutztown.edu. MyKU Mobile provides a quick way for students to view grades, financial aid information, announcements, and schedules, all from your phone. The new site also integrates with social networking sites, enabling students to post their schedules on Twitter and Facebook without ever having to use a computer. Make sure to visit myku.kutztown.edu for the best way to view MyKU on your phone.
This is Officer Riz from Reading Police Department. If you have your wipers on due to inclement weather, you must turn on your headlights. If you don't follow this law, you could be fined. So remember, wipers on, headlights on. It's the law. To learn more about traffic safety, visit justdrivepa.com.
Brought to you by PennDOT and this station.
11:43, right here in today's edition of the Tyler Werner Show, right here on Kutztown Radio. I mentioned we're going to get to the Tyler Werner Show Call Out of the Week, as we always do, in just a moment. But before we do that, I figure get this next KUR notebook announcement out of the way so we can kind of proceed a little bit more uninterrupted this segment. So we can then hit half. We can flow right into the 12 o'clock hour, as I like to call halftime on the Tyler Werner Show. So from the KUR Notebook, attention KU community. Spoken word artist Kyla Lacey will present her poetry at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, April 8th in McFarland Student Union Building, room 183. Lacey's poetry is based on real-life experiences and her stories about triumphing over tragedy. This message of community interest brought to you by the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. Now, with that in mind, we must proceed with the Tyler Werner Show Call Out of the Week.
It's time for Tyler Werner's Call Out of the Week.
I just think somebody owes us an explanation, that's all.
What's the matter with you? Loser! You're a loser!
Are you kidding me?
Well, I have a microphone, and you don't.
So you will listen to every word I have to say!
Yes, and I don't believe that this is, I guess, really ever happened, at least for the Call Out of the Week. But for the second time in a 3-week span here, the Call Out of the Week is going to go to Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles. That's just the way things boil down. Yesterday in Arizona, they had this, this NFL owners meeting day and this and that. So for the first time this year, really, finally, Jeffrey Lurie has some things to say about the past few months and the whirlwind moves that were made in the front office and the firing of Tom Gamble from supposedly Howie Roseman and the demotion, for lack of a better term, of Howie Roseman to essentially being a guy who just signs checks and contracts and essentially a diminished role. And then Chip Kelly gets all this power and just kind of a mess of a situation. I don't know what to believe.
It's almost like a red herring in a way.
Yeah, maybe like a red herring situation, as Matt Walsh would say. Speaking of him, I wonder, he could pop up on this show later on at any given time. He has a habit of he could show up. Maybe he won't. I don't know. Maybe he'll be on to talk about some of this stuff then. But again, for the first time, Jeffrey Lurie is probably it's long overdue. Considering the moves that were made, Jeffrey Lurie, speaks at the owners' meeting yesterday, and it was like in Arizona, and it sounds I've plenty of audio for it. We'll go through some of the things, and it's like I guess maybe in some regards this is going to be like an extended kind of call out of the week kind of thing because we'll listen to parts here and there, and along the way. Just call out on, Jeffrey Lurie on more of the things that he had to say. Because, I mean, I hate to say it, but it was, at least from my perspective and from I'm sure many other people's perspective, a lot of what he had to say, the owner of this team was unfortunately a bunch of garbage.
I just think somebody owes us an explanation, that's all.
Yeah, and you won't really get a good explanation out of any of this, and it's just a shame. But nevertheless, we'll go through some of this. I was listening. Well, I listened to it in full. Actually, yesterday evening. It was like earlier in the day, but it was like mid-afternoon or whatever. I was listening to it. I was actually like listening to it, during a steak dinner and everything, and
put some macaroni and cheese on there too.
I guess fortunately, while I was listening to a bunch of garbage, I guess not really, just a bunch of phoniness. I think, at least I had, some steak and a little bit of wine to, I guess, accompany that, I guess, to some extent. But anyways, we'll listen to, some of that. And again, I mean, there was, for whatever reason, I mean, they were outdoors in Arizona, and it sounds like, Jeffrey Lurie is like in the middle of, they're in the middle of a jungle in the wilderness or whatever. There's, there's birds chirping. There's an occasional, airplane flying overhead makes noise or whatever. So I guess pardon that, but for at least for the most part, you can you can at least hear what Jeffrey Lurie has to say and the questions. But again, unfortunately, I don't think you get much real insight out of any of this. And I think it's just another, the press, the whole thing was like a half hour or whatever. And I mean, it's just another long example to me of weak ownership we have here and not putting the foot down and, perhaps a misguided direction here with the Philadelphia Eagles. So without further ado, let's kick at least part one of Jeffrey Lurie at the owners' meeting yesterday down in Arizona on March 24th, out in the wilderness.
Yeah, it was all my call. I've lived through a lot of division championships, a lot of playoff appearances, a lot of Final Four appearances, but our goal is further than that. We want to deliver a Super Bowl, and sometimes maybe I'm influenced by the notion of it's very difficult to get from good to great. And you've got to take some serious looks at yourself when you want to try to make that step. It's a gamble to go from good to great because you could go from good to mediocre with changes. But I decided that it was important enough to adopt the vision and philosophy of integrating the scouting with the coaching on a daily basis.
But why take how this was not Chip's idea to do that?
Chip had a vision of exactly how he thought we could get from good to great. And I thought it was a really sound vision, that he's a very bright guy. He's all about football. He's all about wanting to win big. And it made so much sense. His, when we hired Chip, his style of play is very different than what we had before. It's, a power spread offense, and it's a 3-4 defense. And we were not organized and designed in that way. We had outstanding young finesse and fast players, really good at that. And we had to, over 2 years, understand where we were at. Were we going to maximize Chip Kelly's vision and system, or were we going to counteract it? And in a sense, not try to maximize having Chip and what he was bringing and the staff to the organization.
You're saying
I'm an owner that tends to absolutely be supportive of a coach and his vision if it's a real sharp and smart vision. And I really believe in that. And I probably am influenced by some of the people that we all respect, with Bill Walsh, Jimmy Johnson, and others in other sports. And the commonality is, as an owner, you have a choice. Do you want to adopt the vision that you think is real sharp and real cutting edge and can get you from good to great, has a chance? Or do you want to just say, the organization's not about that, and we're going to not try to maximize a new coaching philosophy and vision.
This is Chip's vision?
So
to make it clear, was this Chip's vision?
Chip had a vision of how to get from good to great, and this was an improvement on what we had.
And that vision did not include Howie.
Removing Howie was part of that vision.
Having a seamless scouting and coaching enterprise was really what Chip's vision was. He thought, I think that he felt he could be maximized best with a senior personnel executive that was of his choosing. And of course with my approval. And I feel that was important to back him on that and to allow him to maximize and somebody to really fully incorporate scouting exactly as he saw it. It's a different form and structure than we've had in most organizations have in the NFL because it's so tied to a particular series of requirements and modes of play, and it took that.
All right. Let's hold it right there. All right, because that's where and I think the media did a decent job here, trying to get to the bottom of, what about Howie Roseman? Why doesn't this vision include Howie Roseman anymore? Essentially, and and you just heard Jeffrey Lurie say how this vision, it didn't include, or or whatever he said, or I don't know, but they're saying how this vision, why doesn't it include Howie in here or whatever, and that Chip felt that it was better that Howie Roseman was essentially demoted, or I don't know, but Jeffrey Lurie says how this is like a structure that not many people really have in the NFL, and if you kind of boil it down, it's a structure that maybe nobody else in NFL history has really had, because again, Chip Kelly's had 2 years NFL experience and, essentially coaching, and that's it. He didn't have anything before that. He had experience. He was a college coach and everything. He never had any NFL experience at all, except the past 2 years. So if you're going to shift all that power to a coach that, again, 2 years in the NFL, no championships or playoff wins, but just, 2 years in the NFL, that's unheard of. And Jeffrey Lurie's going on to say stuff like, it was for the best of, Chip's vision and maximizing his vision and everything. And it's, I don't know if that's ideal here in the NFL, because it's also, you got Howie Roseman, who actually has had experience in the NFL for some time now as a general manager and everything. And I've been saying this in the past, that my whole theory is, why you got to have some kind of collaboration here. You can't just have, the coach with 2 years NFL experience have all this power and, I've said it, plenty of times before. Why couldn't Jeffrey Lurie create, some kind of collaboration here? After Tom Gamble was fired by Howie Roseman, I guess, which, again, maybe could have been more of a collaborative decision, maybe. I don't know. But it raised a lot of alarms. And, in return, Jeffrey Lurie, well, you know what? We got to maximize Chip's vision or whatever. And, we'll demote Howie Roseman in this way. And, Jeffrey Lurie pretends that that's not what happened. But really, you read between the lines and everything. That is what happened. So that's, it's kind of just ridiculousnand here. And, he gave Chip Kelly all this power. He kind of gave into him. That's, it's weak. A strong owner there said, and maybe one with maybe more sense, I guess, for lack of a better term, says, well, you know what, Howie Roseman, he's this guy, he's been around the NFL for a while. He's been around this franchise. Chip, I know you have this vision or whatever, but we got to make ends meet here. We got to collaborate. We got to work together and everything. That's the bottom line. He gave in to Chip and gave him all this power. Let's hear a little more.
Why take Howie out of the evaluation process? On December 28th, you said that Howie's draft, the 2012 draft, the first one that he was in charge of, was so productive.
Howie's a very valuable member of the organization, and He's a very sharp guy. I feel we have three people that I can truly rely on and are excellent at what they do, and that includes Ed Marinowitz, because you're talking about Howie, who helped recruit Ed and really was responsible for Ed coming to the Eagles. Terrific young evaluator. And you're talking about Howie Roseman, who was really a big part of the process of encouraging us to be patient and to go after Chip.
All right, stop it right there again. Howie Roseman is, quote unquote, a important guy. We have three guys that we can rely on, and as Mike Missanelli would say, your sister.
Your sister.
Howie Roseman, he's not really a third guy here anymore. He's a guy that, signs checks. I don't know. I've heard he's like an equipment manager kind of guy here. Roseman has no creative power whatsoever now, pretty much, over personnel or really anything. I don't. We have three guys we can rely on. And Manowitz, as far as I'm concerned, I know Andy Reid called him a sharp guy. Yes. But to me, I mean, that's a guy that was basically a Chip Kelly hire, and I think it's just kind of a personnel assistant. I don't really think it's a guy that really has any kind of power whatsoever here. So let's not pretend that there's three guys we can rely on or whatever, and that Howie Roseman is an important part of everything we do here. And maybe Howie Roseman was important to some of the things that were, some of the past drafts and everything, but he's not important anymore. That's pretty obvious. So I mean, that's for now. I guess we'll leave it at that, because we got some more to get into, but we'll get back to some of this. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, rubbish of a press conference where we don't really get much of an explanation at all.
I just think somebody owes us an explanation.
Somebody owes us at least a better explanation of what we're getting. But we'll continue to listen and break down, because this is important stuff right here. I mean, it's the ownership of this team. Why we have this 2-year coach, 2 years of NFL coaching experience is all he's had in the NFL, and he's the guy getting all the power. And it's Howie Roseman, who's actually had some NFL experience for some time now, being a general manager, maybe more of a blueprint for success, I would think, when you have, the coach and the GM collaborating, and I guess a personnel guy or whatever. You have more of a collaborative effort rather than, a guy with very limited NFL experience getting all this power who hasn't won anything yet. So that's really that. And again, if this thing fails, if Chip fails, a lot of that we can thank to the ownership of this team, the owner of the team, Jeffrey Lurie. So we'll get into more of that later. But 610-683-4058 is the number to get in. If you want to share your thoughts on this press conference, are you learning anything? Or, is there any insight, or is this just a bunch of fluff too? The way I look at it, I would say the latter. But again, I mean, Jeffrey Lurie given all this power to Chip Kelly, and with his explanations, I mean, so far, and more of it to come later. You tell me if you feel comfortable with the decision that was made, at least right now, before things unfold coming up in the season.
Man's got to know his limitations.
I don't know. I would say that, certainly, when it comes to Jeffrey Lurie giving all that power to Chip Kelly. But we'll see. We'll hear more. We'll get into some other topics on the other side, certainly. But for now, 610-683-4058 or Facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show to share your thoughts. With that in mind, it is halftime on the Tyler Werner Show right here on Kutztown Radio.
KUR Kutztown.
KUR is what you want. Now find out if it's what you need by listening in on 1670 AM or streaming online at www.kur.kutztown.edu. Available at select times of the day on Service Electric Berks Channel 24, Hometown Utilicom Channel 28, and Service Electric Lehigh Channel 266. On your smartphone using a free app like TuneIn, or on any phone simply by dialing 610-465-7860. The radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR.
KUR can also be heard in select campus buildings like the MSU, Rickenbach, Stratton, Rec Center, and Keystone at 88.3 FM.
Nominated for Best College Radio Station at an institution with under 10,000 enrollment and winner of Best Use of Social Media, your news leader in northeastern Berks County, KUR Kutztown.
News, time for news.
The KUR News Time is the top of the hour. I'm Mike Regensberger. Kutztown University's Association of Campus Events brought David Wheeler to Schaefer Auditorium Tuesday evening for a talk in front of several hundred students, faculty, staff, and community members. Wheeler, if you're not familiar with the name, is the father of one of the 20 youngsters shot and killed back in 2012 in the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre. During the hour-long speech, Wheeler recounted the life of his late son, Ben, and the day the horrific incident occurred on December 14th, 2012. The rest of the speech was discussing the issues Wheeler believes led to the shooting and the hundreds of other shootings across the country before and since then. Wheeler says he copes with his son's death by doing the speaking circuit, trying to get out there what he believes may be a solution to the problem of gun violence in the U.S., but stressing that it is a very complex puzzle, and just one piece of the puzzle can't be the solution. Eliminating guns is not going to happen, Wheeler said, and calling everyone who does these sorts of horrific acts crazy is not going to help either. Rather, Wheeler says it's the intersection of all these issues and helping identify people in crisis before things go too far. By the same token, Wheeler said action on the governmental level must also happen as well, too, and encouraged attendees to lobby legislators to expand background checks when purchasing handguns and rifles, and also be involved with their family, friends, and community and help identify troubled people. In addition, Wheeler is heavily involved in Sandy Hook Promise, a group designed to help foster the issues Wheeler believes are at the crux of the issue. Wheeler explained to KUR's own Mitch Lambert at a press conference prior to the talk about Sandy Hook Promise.
Sandy Hook Promise is an organization that it also sprang up from our neighbors and friends around the town. And right now their focus is a concept called Promise Communities. And what they're doing is taking tools to right now the sort of laboratory work is being done in Ohio, in school districts in Ohio, and then after that it'll branch out. But they're taking these tools to these schools and the communities surrounding the schools to help foster community connectedness and gun responsibility and gun safety and mental wellness and mental first aid. They're trying to give these tools to educators and to community members and to parents so that these people can use this knowledge and this understanding first in their family and then in their communities and in their churches and their schools and eventually across the country.
You can get more information about Sandy Hook Promise at sandyhookpromise.org. That's sandyhookpromise.org. Checking KUR Sports, Avalanche, the KU Golden Bears' lovable mascot, is in competition with 13 other mascots in the state system of higher education to find out which one is most popular. The competition is called Mascot Madness, of course a rip on March Madness, which is going on nationally right now. For more information about Avalanche and the program, you can check out kutztown.edu/avalanche. Monsoon Mike says we can expect a surge of warm weather coming in on Thursday, but don't get used to it. Cold air is coming back again on Friday.
All new. It's Sesame Street Live. Make a new friend. No matter where you're from or where you've been, everyone is special, so join in. Elmo, Grover, Abby Cadabby, and their Sesame Street friends explore the universal fun of friendship, from dancing to sharing cookies.
Make a memory with your friends and family. Sesame Street Live, Make a New Friend at the Santander Performing Arts Center, April 8th. Tickets on sale now through Ticketmaster. For late-breaking news, weather, sports, and traffic, sometimes before we can even get it live on the air, make sure you like our award-winning Kutztown University Radio Facebook page or on Twitter at KU Radio. From KUR News, I'm Mike Regensberger. Have a great day.
Any views or opinions expressed on KUR are not necessarily those of Kutztown University, Kutztown University Student Government, Kutztown University Student Services Incorporated, KUR staff and management, or other affiliated organizations.
7 after 12 right here in the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio. Of course, before halftime on the Tyler Werner Show, we listened, we're getting into some of this Jeffrey Lurie press conference from yesterday, the owners' meeting, kind of out in the wilderness, so it would sound like and everything. And we'll get back to some of that a little later. But, going around the NFL a little bit, we had some proposed rule changes last week during a owners committee meeting discussing rule proposals and everything, and go around the NFL a little bit, look at what some teams are trying to do, maybe to change the NFL game. The Detroit Lions, for instance, they presented a proposal that would permit the instant replay system to correct an officiating error that would include such controversial calls as pass interference. Anybody obviously who saw the Detroit-Dallas Cowboys game, I'm sure we know where that's coming from. St. Louis Rams coach Jeff Fisher made it clear his peers wouldn't favor such a change. Now let's go down the list a little bit here. The Indianapolis Colts, they propose a scenario that gives teams that successfully convert two-point conversions the chance to immediately add another point with a bonus field goal. Under the Colts' proposal, if a team converts a two-point conversion, it would then line up from the 32-yard line to attempt a 50-yard field goal. If the kick is good, the team would receive a total of 9 points in that possession, 6 for the touchdown, 2 for the conversion, and a point for the extra field goal. Colts GM Ryan Grigson said, "We're just encouraging dialogue to make the extra point more relevant." So, who is not optimistic that the proposal will pass. I don't know. 9 points there, possibly. Yeah, that's just again too much, and it goes back to last year when they wanted to push back the extra point a few yards, and I didn't. Obviously that's not going to. One of the purposes, I guess, was to make to have less plays that are unexciting or whatever. And I don't really think that whatever changes they made to the extra point last year really changed any of that anyways. But, I mean, that's just that's becoming too much then. It's like they get a 2-point conversion. All right, let's another chance, a chance to add another point onto that. And, line up at the 32-yard kick of, it's getting too ridiculous. So, I mean, with all due respect to the Colts organization, Ryan Grigson, whatever, it's not happening as far as that's concerned. The New England Patriots proposed everything except scoring plays or turnovers can be challenged. Washington suggested increasing a coach's challenge from 2 to 3, regardless of whether he's successful on an early challenge. Stuff like that. New England's use of eligible players in ineligible positions during a playoff win over Baltimore prompted a proposal that such players must line up inside the tackle box, thereby eliminating confusion for defenses. That's whatever, I guess. Furthermore, the New England Patriots, they offered a proposal also, could they, can we decrease the PSI of footballs another 2 PSI?
To me, those balls are perfect.
Yeah, no, I just added that in there just for fun, I guess. That didn't happen. But anyways, so those are some of the proposals going around. And yeah, speaking of, I guess, deflated footballs, it's kind of weird. I haven't heard any updates lately on anything with deflated. The last update I heard was last month or whatever, when somebody, on the Patriots sideline was trying to, I guess, between the ball boy and I don't know, whatever, coordinating the ball. That was pretty much that since then. I mean, but no, there were no proposals in here out of the New England Patriots to deflate football. If the floor on that, the PSI could be lower. That was just
this is the end of this subject for me.
Just a joke
for a long time.
But anyways, those are some of the rule proposals. I don't know if anything is really going to happen there, but as far as this, but you can kind of see. I mean, the Detroit Lions one. That's obviously a little personalized, I guess, kind of tuned to their I guess their playoff loss against the Cowboys. You can kind of see where that's coming from, and the Patriots with their people confusion over the ineligible receiver stuff, and then you got the Colts with their wacky, possible 9-point possession proposals and everything. I don't know. That's pretty much that right there. But yes, see if anything happens out of any of this. But just some of the ideas that are floating around from other owners and organizations around the NFL as far as rule changes goes. Now, let me see here. Let me get back to this. Obviously, what was a big deal yesterday in the Jeffrey Lurie press conference, and in the direction of the ownership of this team. I want to get back to where I had it earlier, so we can kind of pick up where we left off on that press conference yesterday, out in the wilderness, as I called it, with Jeffrey Lurie. Let's hear some more and respond.
You said you were streamlining the process in the front office when Joe Banner stepped down. You only had 2 people. Now you have 3.
No. This is very streamlined now. It's even more streamlined. There's no question that the coach has the final say, and it's the most streamlined you can be.
So Howie has no authority at all, and neither does Ed Banner when it comes to decisions.
No, I said they don't have the final say. I said the coach has the final say.
On December.
He has. Howie Roseman has no say. Let's just put it that way. Final say, this, that, and Howie Roseman has no say whatsoever. So let's get that out of the way right there. Let's continue.
31st.
What's that?
On December 31st, the Tom Gamble parted ways, removed, however you want to phrase it, and that was against Chip's choosing from the way it was explained to us. What changed during those 2 days in between Tom losing his job and Howie getting...
It was completely unrelated.
It was
totally unrelated. Wish Tom all the best, and we'll thrive hopefully in San Francisco. And we've moved on, and he's moved on.
Were you not happy with the job that he did while he was here?
I think you have to decide who's going to be the best fits for the organization, and that was, I think it's best that we all move on that one.
Jeff has said that he respects him as a football man, and you're saying you want to do what's best for the organization.
I got to always look at what's best for the organization, and that's
who fired him.
Who physically,
No, but who had the final say in firing Tom?
The owner always has the final say.
Jeff, is there a danger in giving a head coach or a risk this much personnel control where, you're the only one who's really answering to making these decisions?
I think there's a risk no matter how you structure it. The only model to me that correlates with big success in the NFL is having a Hall of Fame franchise quarterback. And then you can put any system around that player and you can rationalize that structure. No matter what other structure you pick in the NFL, whether it's the structure the Patriots have and Seattle has and other teams, that's fine. You can have the system that Green Bay has and Baltimore has. That's fine. There's no perfect structure. I think you've got to always figure out how to maximize the people you have, and don't think that structure is the answer. It's people, and try to manage and maximize the people you have. Try to pick the best head coach you can, the best evaluators you can, and don't put your feather on structure, because the best structure is a franchise quarterback that's going to play for 10, 15 years for your franchise.
So at the end of the 2012 season,
Howie about this. I know that his lifelong ambition was to be in personnel. That's why he got into this business. Mm-hmm. You've taken him out of personnel. How is his demeanor going forward? What is his outlook on this? Did you think about the difficulty of keeping him?
Oh, yes, of course. Howie's been great. I mean, he has been with us for, 15, 16 years. And grown with the organization, and he's as selfless as you can be. He just wants to win, and that's all Chip wants to do. That's all we all want to do. And, you can talk all you want about structure and final say. What any organization, I think, worth their salt wants to do is try to get the players that the coaches need and try to make sound decisions, manage the salary cap so you're not sacrificing the future for present decisions, be smart about it, and focus primarily on the draft, except when you have instances where you can take advantage of the free agency market.
Jeff, why did Howie not make it seamless? Why, you said you wanted to be seamless. Why was Howie not seamless?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It wasn't Howie. I think it was much more Chip's requirement to have sort of a football guy that he was comfortable with in terms of helping him day to day and minute by minute. And we all recognize the value of, in an organization today, you better have somebody that can really manage the cap well, negotiate well, execute the plans well, and at the same time evaluate well and be tied at the hip with the coach in terms of evaluation.
So how? All right, so that's a little more of that there. I mean, go through a couple of the things there, I guess, that were said. I mean, he started drifting off into the structure of a team and an organization and whatever, and he goes off, about the, having a franchise quarterback, whenever, somebody that can play for 10 to 15 years. And you wonder, they just brought in Sam Bradford, and as banged up as he's been throughout his career, and maybe hasn't lived up to the hype of being the first pick in the 2010 NFL draft. Do you expect him to be a franchise quarterback here for 10 to 15 years? I don't. I mean, he brings that up. I don't. I guess it's a different story if you're maybe drafting somebody who, is I guess a green banana here in this league, a la Marcus Mariota or whoever, another, or even just, even like Brett Hundley or anybody else, any other quarterback that, is yet to play an NFL game, who hasn't been around the league for several years now and hasn't accomplished anything really. And along the way has been, torn his ACL a couple times and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, I don't understand that. And he brings up structure too, and again, it goes back to Howie Roseman. Like, how wouldn't Howie Roseman? Why wouldn't he be seamless in this situation? And Jeffrey Lurie kind of points out, it's more about Chip's vision and everything, and Chip felt this way, and you got to, again, Jeffrey Lurie gives in to Chip here. He gives in to this, this head coach who's. He's been in the league only 2 years. He's, I guess he's, to some extent, he's been decent, but he hasn't won anything yet. He hasn't certainly accomplished anything that would warrant him the right, or the owner to have a common sense reason or reasons to make Chip Kelly, basically the be-all, end-all, the guy that has all the power in the organization, essentially. Not just the final say, but basically the only say. Because, again, Howie Roseman, he doesn't... As long as Chip's in charge here of everything, as long as Chip has the final say, as far as I'm concerned, Howie Roseman has no say. That's pretty much that. And again, this goes to the whole thing, like, Jeffrey Lurie, maybe a stronger owner there, says, all right, hold on a second. Howie Roseman has been with us for all this time, and he's been very important. He says that, but suddenly he's not important enough to, so that we can maybe have some kind of collaboration here. We can have some kind of even ground here. We can try to work things together. If I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I say, all right, Chip, I know you got this vision here and whatever, but this is the NFL. We got to, in Howie Roseman, he's been with us for a long time. We got to come together here. We got to try to collaborate, and etc. I mean, Chip's been, Chip's a spring chicken, I guess, at this, thus far in his career. Sweet sour pork, right? So I mean, it's, it just goes back, it goes back to some of these things, and they continue to press Jeffrey Lurie on this, and we'll hear a little more coming up a little later. But before we proceed, we got to hit the next break, and before that, from the KUR Notebook, attention KU community, check out Ghost in the House on Thursday, April 9th at 7 p.m. in Schaefer Auditorium. Tony Todd as Jack Johnson. Cost is $15 for KU students at MSU Info Desk. This message of community interest brought to you by the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. With that in mind, we will hit the next break, and we'll come back on the other side with continued discussion here. As we got a couple other topics to get into, I guess you could say as well. So that in mind is the Tyler Werner Show right here on Kutztown Radio. Stay right with us.
Hey, dudes! We are Pack 183. You're listening to KUR. Hey, dudes! Cool dudes!
I heard on the news about that 5-year-old who found his uncle's gun. The kid didn't know it was loaded.
I heard on the news about that 14-year-old girl who was bullied online for like a year. She couldn't take it anymore, so she got her dad's gun from his nightstand.
I heard on the news about that guy who broke into someone's house, stole a gun from the hall closet.
He accidentally shot his cousin in the head.
She killed herself.
And later, killed the owner of the store he was trying to rob.
If you own a gun, you have a full-time responsibility. When you aren't using it, be sure it can't get into the hands of curious children, troubled teenagers, a thief, or anyone else who might misuse it. Your family, friends, and neighbors are all counting on you. Remember, always, lock it up. For more information on firearms storage safety, visit ncpc.org. This message brought to you by the National Crime Prevention Council, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and the Ad Council.
I've handled dozens of balls over the past week. The texture of the balls is very easy to identify. The pressure of the balls is a whole different story.
Yes, owners meeting obviously the past week or so, and yeah, there was no I guess proposal on the New England Patriots to, we could lower the floor, I guess, the floor limit there on the PSI of the footballs and whatever. So, but there's a lot going on, I guess, with rule proposals. But that was not one of them. For those who maybe heard a bit of a joke earlier on in the show, but it's fun to joke about guys like Bill Belichick, or oftentimes as morose as can be in press conferences and everything else, unless he's on the David Letterman show or something odd like that. But anyways, 610-683-4058. It said, we're going, really going through the, I guess, dissecting a lot of what Jeffrey Lurie had to say himself yesterday at the owners' meeting down out in the wilderness, down in Arizona, and we'll continue that in just a moment. But, of course, last week, we talked about this a little bit, we had Tim Tebow, what was it, like last Monday or something, work out at the NovaCare complex, and many people were, curious, why, okay, some people were scared about the media circus this could be if Tim Tebow were here and everything, and, but Chip Kelly, he had something to say the other day about it, so for those who haven't heard it, I guess Chip Kelly's thoughts, he discusses why, they had a workout and they let Tim Tebow work out here. Then get a little theme music here for Tim Tebow while I read this. We bring in a lot of players for private workouts. It's just, he's the one that everyone keeps talking about, Kelly said. We brought in Terrell Pryor for a workout and Thad Lewis in for a workout. When players are available for you to work them out, it's the same thing of going to a veteran combine or going to the super regional combine. It's getting an exposure to a player so that when you have to make a decision and say, hey, what are we going to do now? You say, I don't know anything about these players. Let's bring them in and work them out. And it may be too late at that point in time. So all we're doing is just doing our homework. He's actually, Kelly's supposed to meet this morning, or I guess he did meet this morning at the NFL annual meeting, but yeah, that pretty much takes care of that. I mean, Chip Kelly said that he's always been a fan of Tim, in short, and you know, that pretty much takes care of that, I guess. Again, I mean, nothing's really coming out of this yet. I guess, you know, Chip Kelly's just doing his homework, I guess he said, as far as in regards to Tim Tebow working out for the Eagles last week. So, I don't know. I guess, you know, take what you want out of that, I guess. I don't know. But anyways, 610-683-4058 is the number to get in on today's edition of the Tyler Werner Show, or post a thought at facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show, of course, as always, if you'd like to as well. Now, for obvious reasons, we haven't really gotten into the, last week we didn't really either, and this past week, obviously we didn't, you know, today's show, there's not much to really talk about with the Philadelphia Flyers as it is. I mean, you know, last night they lose 4-5 to Edmonton, and I mean, they're on a 4-game losing streak here, and I mean, they've just obviously, you know, I think it's fun. The other day I saw that a new Mission Impossible movie is coming out shortly. Actually, I don't know, what is it, like the 5th or 6th Mission Impossible movie that's coming out now? I don't know, but you know, I guess for those who are, you know, still clinging to some kind of hopes that the Flyers are going to make the playoffs this year, you know, with the few games that they have left, I guess look through the schedule here a little bit. As I'd like to call this, you know, this little segment of the show here, Mission Impossible: The Flyers Hunt for a Playoff Spot. All right, so tonight, 8 p.m., they got the Chicago Blackhawks. Yeah, I mean, at the Wells Fargo Center. Put that down as a loss. This coming Saturday at 1 p.m., they got the San Jose Sharks. Yeah, probably put that down as another loss. And then they got next Wednesday, I guess, you know, they got the Pittsburgh Penguins at Pittsburgh, the Consol Energy Center, where for whatever reason the Flyers always put a win together, no matter how bad they've been lately. Maybe they'll, you know, for all the fans, they'll put a win together there. Saturday, April 4th, day before Easter, they got the Carolina Hurricanes. I don't know, could be another loss there. And then they got another game against the Pittsburgh Penguins on Easter Sunday at 12:30 p.m. This time, Pittsburgh at the Wells Fargo Center against the Flyers. You know, it's a shame. I mean, it's a game that probably doesn't mean anything at this point, because the Flyers will probably be mathematically eliminated from the playoff race at that point anyways. And then they got, you know, Tuesday, April 7th, the New York Islanders coming to town. New York Islanders looking really good this season. They got the Hurricanes again a couple days later, and the Senators, the last game of the season on Saturday, April 11th, who actually in the playoff race right now, as I, you know, fade out this Mission Impossible music. Actually, Ottawa has actually creeped their way into the 8th seed right now, the second wild card spot in the Eastern Conference over Boston, actually. So Boston's actually on the outside looking in right now. But so Ottawa right now is the team to chase, and the Flyers are 11 points behind Ottawa, and Ottawa has 2 games in hand. So I mean, it's just, you know, again, it's a lost cause. But I think it's funny, actually, because the other day, actually, you know, I'm hearing about, you know, people, I guess, you know, you could say people in my life that are going to Flyer games and, you know, that are coming up. And it's, I mean, the other day I was, you know, there's actually this, you know, I guess girl that I've been seeing the past few weeks. And, yeah, and, Actually, she said that she was like going to the Flyers. She might be going to a Flyers game on the 28th. I think she said, which is Saturday, 1 p.m. against the Sharks at home. Which I kind of told her that, I guess have fun there, because, I kind of told, because I don't think she's following the Flyers religiously or anything. I would think, but I mean, maybe just, Kat, she's going with friends and whatever. And I said, well, I guess have fun with that, because, I basically told the Flyers are kind of dead in the water right now. So, I guess, hopefully you can enjoy the game. And then, later on that evening, actually, when, I get home and, cause Easter's coming up soon, and this year, my mom was telling me how my brothers are having this thing. Well, my one brother at his house is up in Bethlehem, not too far from the Kutztown area, actually having a, I guess an Easter dinner thing. Originally they were going to have it early in the afternoon, but they're going to the Flyers game, and the Flyers game was, I guess, rescheduled, pushed back to, or pushed forward, however you want to, think of it. It was pushed back to 12:30 p.m., which I think I feel like it's normally somewhat earlier in the day anyways, when they have a traditional Flyers game on Easter. So then I guess they're going to have the dinner later on in the evening and, go up there and, but that game is at home against the Pittsburgh Penguins at 12. And it's always great to see the Flyers take on the Pittsburgh Penguins, but at the same time, it's like another case of, well, I guess have fun, maybe beating the Pittsburgh Penguins, but ultimately not having anything really to play for the rest of the season, essentially, at that point. Because there'll be, I would think by that point they're going to be mathematically eliminated from the playoff race anyways. So, I mean, cool. I mean, if it's one of those things, maybe the Flyers, they get a win, woohoo, they beat the Penguins, but ultimately at the end of the day, I mean, on Easter Sunday, I mean, when the game's over, win or lose or whatever, Flyers aren't making the playoffs right now, and they got some work to do. So that's really where we're at there. I mean, that's, and earlier when I was talking to Mitch Lambert and he said he was busy today, so he wasn't going to join the show. I kind of said, well, I don't blame you too much. I mean, at least, there's not really anything to talk about the Flyers or whatever, and I figured I'd address some of what he said last week. I figured I'd just address myself anyways. So that was pretty much that. But yeah, so I mean, some people, people close to me, I guess you could say, that are, going to see Flyers game, a little segment, I guess we'll call, lost causes of, Flyers, pointless Flyers games, essentially, basically tank mode at this point. I don't know, I guess, but and for those out there who you have any Flyers tickets right now, or any games you're going to see, like, are you really excited to actually, to still go see them at this point? I mean, is it, woo, like, Flyers, let's go, they have nothing to play for. And it's kind of sad. If I was, going to see a Flyers game right now, I'd be pretty bummed out, because at this point, the games really don't mean anything. That's the bottom line. So I guess, to my brothers and, the new girl I've been seeing the past few weeks, I guess have fun at your Flyers games. But fortunately, there's not much for them to really play for. So 610-683-4058, number to get in, as always. Let's hear a little more of what Jeffrey Lurie had to say before we head into the final block of time right here in the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio today. Let's just pick up a little later in the press conference with Jeffrey Lurie.
Is to, trade a LaShawn McCoy or a wonderful young man like Nick Foles. Talked to Trent Cole the other day for a long, long time. Todd Harriman's played injured, one of the toughest guys we've ever had. Jason Avant last year. It's the two things that are hardest owning a team are where you get really attached to the players because of what they've done for you and the city. And you get to know their family environments. You get to know what their challenges are from youth through becoming a professional. And the second is losses, and they're both losses. But when you always struggle with the fact that you spend so much time going over a loss of a game than you do celebrating a win, and that's a hard thing to manage.
You mentioned the draft. Did last year's draft illustrate to you, when you were thinking about making this change, that maybe with Howie getting players and Chip, that there was not the symmetry you were looking for, that vision wasn't being...
No, it's much more in the training of the scouting staff by the coaches in terms of what exactly is needed. It's so defined in Chip's system. I've never seen anything like it. It's incredibly detailed, both psychologically, athletically, in so many categories. I mean, if there's notebooks you could read, and it's incredibly defined. And in order really to maximize Chip, I think this, was the best way to go.
Do you think with all the moves Chip has made the last 3 weeks or so, do you think maybe he was kind of held back from doing that? With the old system with Howie.
That's a great question. I think what Chip, you have to ask Chip, but I think what he did the first 2 years was he adapted to what we had. We had some, excellent young players, and I think he adapted. Obviously, double-digit wins in both years, losing our starting quarterback this year. Did an outstanding coaching job. I think he was testing himself to see, how far he could go with what we had. And but there was always the sense that in shifting to both a 3-4 defense and much more of a power spread offense that he prefers, that we didn't have exactly the players that could maximize him. In attracting Chip, I wanted him to be able to come to the NFL and get the best out of him. That's what an owner, I think, needs to try to do. You don't want to say, here's the NFL, adapt to it. You want to bring in somebody who's innovative, sharp, hardworking, selfless about trying to become a really good team, and support that.
All right, that's enough of that for now. Once again, I mean, again, it's the whole thing. Giving Chip Kelly all this power, and earlier he said, how it's a big risk, and Jeffrey Lurie, you got to take chances and everything, and to go from good to great and everything, and this, that, and the other, and it's just one of those things where it's like, well, that's an enormous, it's one thing to gamble a little bit, but that's an enormous, unheard of risk, given essentially all the say and all the power that Chip Kelly, again, 2 years in the NFL, like Jeffrey Lurie just mentioned, back-to-back 10-6 seasons and everything. And Jeffrey Lurie's saying how it's, about maximizing Chip himself, and when I think of maximizing Chip, the first thing I think of is having the ideal quarterback that can, run the read option, not just the read option, but has the tools, Marcus Mariota, or if it happens to be any other quarterback who, has the kind of tools. The point is, Sam Bradford is, at least on the surface, not that guy, unless there's something that all of us have been missing the past several years of his time in the NFL. It's a whole different thing in of itself. But as far as maximizing, I don't know. I mean, Riley Cooper here, I don't think he's he's here maximizing Chip Kelly. The quarterbacks that they have right now, again, I know maybe Chip tried to adapt to Nick Foles and, whoever else they've had here during the time, but the guy that they just brought in, Sam Bradford, he gonna maximize Chip Kelly? I don't think so.
No.
And again, I mean, I don't know. I look at what Jeffrey Lurie says, and I can't. It's hard to follow any of it, really. But anyways, we got one more break to hit here. But before that, attention KU community. Epsilon Sigma Alpha is hosting a book swap on April 11th to promote literacy in the community. It'll be held in the DMZ. If it rains, it will be moved to the Old Main Concourse and will run from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Bring your used books and swap them for others. All leftover books and all profits will be going to a needy library within the community. This message of community interest brought to you by the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. Without further ado, I believe it's telescopic topics time right here on the Tyler Werner Show. So we'll be right back after that.
It's Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us.
We all know the brightest object in our night sky is our moon. But do you know what the second brightest object is? It's actually our sister planet Venus. But how much do we really know about Venus? Well, in the grand scheme of things, Venus and Earth do not differ very much in terms of distance from the sun and even age. Yet Venus is drastically different from our home planet. In fact, the atmosphere on Venus is 90 times thicker than Earth's. This thick atmosphere causes some intense weather effects. Perhaps the most daunting of those effects is the extreme heat. Venus has a surface temperature of 900 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot enough to melt lead. Another contributing factor to Venus's unfriendly atmosphere are the clouds that are made up of corrosive sulfuric acid. Needless to say, because of these factors, life is theorized to be impossible here. However, what Venus lacks might be the most dangerous part about the planet. Venus doesn't have a magnetosphere like we do on Earth. Many of you may not have realized that the magnetosphere existed. Rest assured, if it didn't, you'd know. When the sun releases solar wind towards the Earth, it collides with the magnetic field tens of thousands of miles from Earth. This causes explosions far above the atmosphere that can lead to dramatic weather changes on Earth. However, when these weather explosions or hot flow anomalies happen on Venus, they hit the planet much closer to the surface, and scientists have observed weather explosions larger than the planet itself. In other words, Earth-sized waves of 10 million degree plasma from the sun hit Venus at supersonic speeds a mere thousands of miles from the surface multiple times a day. This could possibly cause planet-wide disruptions and is one of the main reasons Venus is the uninhabitable, harsh planet it is today. One could only imagine what the Earth would be like without the protection from the magnetosphere.
Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us. Stay tuned to KUR for more telescopic topics, and for more information or to hear the segment again, click on the Telescopic Topics icon on the KUR website at www.kutztown.edu/KUR. Telescopic Topics is a production of the KU Physical Sciences Department and is recorded by the KU astronomy students in the studios of KUR. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
It is 1:15 right here on the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio. We got to wrap things up soon, as we always do here on the Tyler Werner Show a little earlier, because I got a little meeting to go to, I guess, with my, for a one of my 10 projects that I'm working on this semester right now, as an electronic media major and future May graduate. So yeah, as Brian Dawkins would say there. Although it's the season of Lent, I think that's supposed to hold off on saying that, I guess, until Easter. I guess if you follow that tradition, but nevertheless, I mean, that's pretty much that. And my thoughts on a word to describe me graduating in May, I guess, right now. But right now, anyways, before we go any further, let's, as we start to end the show, continue with the MVP of the week right here on the Tyler Werner Show. It's time for Tyler Werner's MVP of the week. And yes, we lost a great Eagles legend, Chuck Bednarik, the NFL's Iron Man, as some would call him. Playing the full 60 minutes on offense and defense, the Philadelphia Eagles bruiser helped secure one of pro football's most thrilling title games. Of course, before the Super Bowl era, obviously. But Chuck Bednarik passed away at age 89 on Saturday, right over in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Yeah, again, many would call him NFL's Iron Man, the Eagles legend. So, he obviously played both center and linebacker on defense for an entire game oftentimes, including the skirmish against Vince Lombardi's legendary Green Bay Packers back on December 26, 1960, which I guess brought the Eagles their most satisfying championship and essentially their last to date, again, back before the Super Bowl era. So we remember Concrete Charlie Bednarik. Rest in peace. And, certainly he's known for, that hit on Frank Gifford, obviously years ago, former Giants player. So let's hear the audio of that as a tribute to him. Oh well. Oh, my bad. I guess it's just music. They didn't have audio of it. But all right, I just watched it. I watched it. I guess that was a pointless. For those listening, I guess that was just a pointless little. I guess crescendo of music there. I guess so. Hope you enjoyed that, everybody. But I guess YouTube the hit. I mean, it's not hard to find if you don't know what I'm talking about, but. That's a moment that he's very remembered for, as as a Philadelphia Eagle and being a legend and everything. So that's pretty much that. For those who are I guess interested, I mean, who watch it. This Sunday is WrestleMania for the WWE. And for those who are, curious for, last night, I mean, it was on ESPN, so I guess it's a talkable subject here, regarding WWE, current WWE World Heavyweight Champion Brock Lesnar, former UFC champion, has declared last night that he will not be returning to UFC. There was obviously a lot of speculation that he would, return to the octagon. Not that it's a huge subject here on the Tyler Werner Show, but for those who I guess haven't heard yet, it kind of broke last night on ESPN, and Brock Lesnar basically saying he just wasn't mentally there. I guess as far as returning to UFC, and looks like he's gonna stay with World Wrestling Entertainment. He kind of said, he's kind of just at a point where he wants to have fun, and certainly it seems like when he's out there tearing guys to shreds as the current WWE World Heavyweight Champion, it seems like if you're one of those people that watch that that product, it seems like he has a lot of fun doing it, and looks like he's going to continue to, I guess, having some more fun playing the Beast Incarnate, Brock Lesnar, in World Wrestling Entertainment.
It's not rocket science, people.
So there you go. It's that was like a, we just came off of NFL free agency, recently. So there's like I guess a free agency update on Brock Lesnar in a sense. If you want to go into WWE and UFC or whatever combat sports entertainment free agency direction you want to go there. So that's pretty much that in a nutshell. So that's Brock Lesnar. I mean, he's a beast to watch. Whether it's in UFC and or especially WWE. Albeit in scripted fashion. He's what can you say? He's an entertaining guy to watch, nevertheless. So that's pretty much that. Again, I don't know. The whole Jeffrey Lurie thing. I know that was kind of a focal point to the show today. Obviously, there was a lot to get into and everything, and as far as Jeffrey Lurie is concerned, the direction of this franchise, and the way things are being run, the way so much all the power has been given to Chip Kelly. I mean, it's been a whirlwind off season so far. We will continue to discuss it throughout the coming month of April. This is hard to believe, but last March edition of the Tyler Werner Show. So already we're getting into the month of April, which means we're getting closer to the draft. What will they add? In the draft, what are they going to do? They have some positions of need and everything you could ask for there. There's so much yet to to talk about in the coming month. Maybe we'll get into more of this discussion next week. Maybe Mitch Lambert will be back on the show with us. Maybe I ought to try to get Matt, remind Matt Walsh, like, hey, you're welcome to come back on the show. I think
it's almost like a red herring in a way.
Because I think he did a good job the other, on the spring break edition when he was in here, and so maybe I'll remind him, try to get him back on the show, because it's it's always nice to have a person to, I guess, converse with or whatever. So that's it's really what we're looking at here as we continue to progress through the Eagles off season here. I mean, we're getting into April territory here, and it's crunch time as far as the draft coming up goes, and just whatever else we have coming up here. So again, I mean, maybe the theme of today's show was rip into Jeffrey Lurie. I don't know, maybe if that's how some people viewed it, but this is some big stuff, the way this organization is being run. This is to me, I mean, it's never been run like this before, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you could say it's that he's one of the Chip Kelly or whatever, this is one of the few franchises that does this, as far as hiring a coach straight out of college who's never had any NFL experience, and then 2 years later, with just those 2 years of experience alone and not winning a championship or a playoff game, giving him all that power. It's what is going on back there? It's a very interesting situation right here in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia. So without further ado, I mean, that'll close things down for the Tyler Werner Show today. Thanks for joining us, as always, if you've stayed tuned with us or if you just tuned in or whatever. Catch the podcast, I guess, either today or tomorrow on the Facebook page at facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. And as always, we'll be right here next week, I believe, once again on another April Fool's Day, the way things worked out last year with the dates of the Tyler Werner Show and the way they work out this year. Yeah, it'll be another April Fool's Day edition of the Tyler Werner Show. So stay tuned for that, as we'll continue these conversations next week right here on Kutztown Radio. As always, everybody have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you next week on the Tyler Werner Show.